Hey everybody, ronarray here, and I've been playing Monk and updating my build for it from the start of Path of Exile 2. So in today's video I want to showcase the Nuclear Wave Flurry with Custom Shock, next evolution step of my build. And this video will be a detailed build guide to answer all your questions. It is a very good bossing, which is fast and pretty efficient. Here for example try Master Pinnacle fight. Most of the bosses that you will fight will be electrocuted and also frozen, making most of the fights trivial, and you will disintegrate them very fast with right setup. It also has a very good clear, can reach close to 100% critical chance while clearing too, and combines crazy AoE that triple Storm Wave with numerous buffs on top can provide, together with heavy explosions from Herald device, literally destroying screens with one click. You don't need to click charge stuff all the time too, or stack any cold damage anywhere. To play it, you also don't need to swap any gems between bossing and clearing setups, and can use all the items that you have used from previous versions of my builds. 3 is also changed only slightly, so it will be very convenient to swap. Let's go forward and I will be able to explain how it works in that detailed build guide. So let's start with the essential, how our explosions are working and how we are exploding screens. Generally it's a pretty basic tech. Pulse Circle Sapphire Ring. Enemies chilled by your hits can be shattered as though frozen. But I'm not stacking any cold damage on my quarterstaff, because right now if we will just change our Ascendancy to I'm the Blizzard and add on top of it Essence of the Mountain, it will provide 15% of damage as extra cold damage, and it's more than enough to chill our enemies. Most of the time, you need to have a particular damage number on your Storm Wave to chill your enemies. For example, usually you need at least 300 cold damage. Right now I have 366 and up to 1000, and it's more than enough. So that way, I can properly avoid stacking any cold damage and just explode all enemies from chilling them with Storm Wave while clearing. If you will not have enough cold damage in that regard, just with I'm the Blizzard and Essence of the Mountain, you can pick a few nodes for cold. For example, you can pick that one and that one, small ones, and you can add Thin Ice for example too. However, most of the time you will have enough and you will just explode enemies without any kind of issue. So that tech is very basic, you just need to chill and enemies will be shattered. But to shatter them you will need to use Herald of Ice. Currently, Herald of Ice providing a pretty nice buff, while active shattering an enemy with attack hit will cause an icy explosion. So explosions chain and you will be able to shatter as many enemies as are pretty much in the vicinity. To the Herald of Ice we are adding Cold Infusion together with Cold Mastery and Magnified Effect. Please keep in mind that having Magnified Effect here is very important for better nuclear shatter. Cold Mastery by itself and Cold Infusion is just fine. And you will probably have enough cold damage if your quarterstaff has a lot of physical, because your physical will be used as the explosion basis. However, as you can see, my Herald of Ice is also doing lightning damage too, even if it's not that high. Moving forward, I want to showcase my setup for Storm Wave. Right now, Storm Wave is the main skill that we are using to clear, because in my opinion, Storm Wave has much better AoE compared to almost any other option. If we would use Tempest Flurry with charge stuff, AoE will be significantly less, and we can use Storm Wave together with charge stuff too for a perfect clear. So, supports for Storm Wave are all there to improve our clearing. We have an upheaval for 3 features, which is going to help us to reach all monsters on the screen in all places. I'm also using Light Infusion as we did before, together with Primal Armament and Innervate. I think Innervate here is absolutely amazing. Since we are currently not using Electrocutor at our Storm Wave, Innervate will proc all the time. You can check it in my gameplay. Every time when I'm playing, there's a little buff on the top of the left, because we're constantly shocking enemies and killing them, receiving 35% of additional lightning damage. And here is an interesting question, how I'm reaching close to 100% of critical. There is a buff called Ambush, which gives us supported skill have 100% more critical hit chance against the enemies that are on full life. Please notice that it's 100% more critical hit chance, and not increased. making it a multiplier. And multiplier, since I already have 50% critical hit chance, is moving us close to 100, because it's basically close to double our critical hit chance. So almost all hits with Storm Wave to the enemies that are on full life are going to be a critical hit chance, which is absolutely amazing for clear, because every wave that we are shooting around is going to crit enemies and going to immediately explode them. That way we don't need to click enemies a few times like many other options for different builds. We just need to hit them once with a huge wave for a huge amount of damage. The rest of the buffs are working pretty good too, there's not a lot of changes, and Innervate here helps us to always deal enough. I'm currently at 72,000 DPS, but with Innervate it should go up to 100, so it's definitely worth it. And keep in mind that having critical higher than 50%, it's also recommended. But what about bossing? So how we are bossing? I wanted to showcase my changed boss setup, because right now I'm using a dedicated one. For bossing, we are going to use Tempest Flurry, but we don't need to swap any gems. We can just hit enemies with Tempest Flurry. For Tempest Flurry, I'm using Martial Tempo, Electrocute, Practice Combo, and Rage. So Martial Tempo is here for more attack speed, and that's probably the most important gem in the setup. After that we have an Electrocute, because that way we will be able to just stun the boss. And Practice Combo will help us to spam numerous Tempest Bells, because Tempest Bell right now is the strongest ability against bosses. I'm using Rage because I think it's a pretty nice buff to stack Rage faster, but we are still stacking from the jewel, so if you don't want to use it, that's alright. You can add last gem, whatever that you like. For example, Heft would add some damage, or you can try to run some additional buffs. You can also run Calvin Strike or Crescendo, or any buff that you like as the last. Generally, I would probably prefer Crescendo, but currently I don't have the last slot for Tempest Flurry, and it's still destroying bosses just fine. So talking about Tempest Bell, which is probably the most important skill in the setup. It has numerous skills that usually used to improve damage, but we can use them on different skills because they're increasing cost multiplier significantly. For example, Close Combat gives 25% more attack damage, which is absolutely insane, but has 140% cost multiplier, which is pretty bad. I'm also using Overabundance to stack 2 bells, because we're generating more combo with Practice Combo. We can just drop Overabundance every time and use 2 bells. Concentrated effect is also pretty close. It could be a little harder to reach the boss with our bell, but I still recommend to use it. And the last part is Heavy Swing. We don't care about Heavy Swing, less attack speed, and we care only about melee physical damage increase, which is pretty nice, so I'm currently using 4 slots. As the last one, you can use Heft again, for example, because Heft is a pretty decent option for maximum physical damage. So last part for our boss damage and success is pretty much Cast on Shock. Cast on Shock is currently back in the build, and I think it helped significantly with fighting bosses. With Cast of Shock, we are going to use basic supports such as Impetus for more energy and Energy Retention for even more energy. However, since Cast on Shock is going to be cast pretty often, I recommend to change Inspiration and use it, because Inspiration will help with our mana cost. So as a Cast on Shock skill, we have a few options. First one is Comet, and I think Comet is working very good because it's freezing enemies pretty fast, and it also has a pretty decent critical chance. But mana cost for Comet is very high. However, when it's hitting the bell, it's dealing a lot of damage. As a second option, if you dislike Comet, you can try to run IO Winter. IO Winter is going to help a lot with applying critical weakness on enemies. It's going to add additional critical hit chance for us, and working pretty nice. So both IO Winter and Comet are a decent option. Most of the time I'm running with Comet, but IO Winter could be an option too. I recommend to change any that you currently like. So in that Cast on Shock setup, we need to change a few auras to make sure that we are making it in terms of spirit. So as an auras right now, we are using Vine Dancer with Spin, Maim and Blind. It's a pretty cool combination. It's going to blind enemies, it's going to maze them and pin them, which is very good. We're also still using Charge Staff to shock when we are fighting bosses, so shock for bosses coming from Charge Staff. That way I'm using Persistence, Conduction and Overcharge. Conduction here to increase our shock chance, and Overcharges here to make sure our magnitude is higher, especially at bosses. And we're still using Combat Frenzy to receive some charges for charge stuff. I think it's pretty much worth it. So Combat Frenzy together with Profusion should work very good. I'm also using Blink because I feel like Blink is pretty important right now for making our gameplay smooth. So Blink together with Ingenuity and Clarity helps a lot. And the last aura is Cast on Shock. Generally you should have enough spirit to reach Cast on Shock, and I currently have about 218 spirit, just making enough to use all auras. If you don't have it, you can drop Cast on Shock against the bosses because it's not really that important. Or if you don't really care about charge stuff, you can drop Combat Frenzy and Bell is going to shock by itself. So moving forward, to use your charges with your Tempest Bell and Combat Frenzy, you will need to use Resonance, Combat Frenzy, and you will need to electrocute or freeze enemies. So generally, most of the time we're generating charges on bosses. While clearing, we don't really care about charges because we're one-shotting and exploding everything with huge nuclear explosions. So just ambush and innervate on Storm Wave should be enough. But on bosses to generate charges, Combat Frenzy, Resonance and electrocute at Tempest Flurry comes in handy. So let's talk about the changes in R3 and changes in the items that I wanted to showcase as well. So for the items, I added Pulsarcane Ring as I already mentioned, and all of the items stayed the same. But if you have a lot of funds, I recommend to run Hand of Wisdom in action, because I think it can help a lot with additional damage. But if you don't have 10 Divines, which could be an issue, you could still run the gloves that I showcased in my previous versions of the build. I tested the build with those gloves and everything working just fine. So if you have them, just keep them and don't worry about getting Hand of Wisdom in action. The rest of the things stay the same, so we're not changing anything for our Amulet, we're not changing anything for our body armor, for helmet. Second ring is here just for resistances and some mana regeneration. And hunting shoes could be pretty nice just for movement speed and resistances. Just make sure that your resistances are kept. I'm talking about the tree. The only important change that we need to get is Essence of the Mountain, so we need to spend 2 points here for Essence of the Mountain. The rest stays the same. I also dropped one with the river, lowering defenses a little. If you don't feel like it's a good idea, you can still keep it. So I passed to the left as I showcased that in my last video, so catalyzes for physical damage from hits taken as elemental, and took all the nodes here. For electrocution build-up, I'm still using electrocution just against bosses, but if you don't really care about fighting harder bosses, you can drop those 4 points and invest them elsewhere. I'm currently not taking dexterity and additional evasion, however for better defenses, I honestly recommend to take it. So just to save a few points, you can drop some additional damaging stabs, just dropping jewel here for example, and 1 jewel here. And instead you can just take all evasion nodes here and here. If you don't have enough spirit, for example, to reserve all the auras, you can also use reduced reservation of Herald skills points here. If you want, there's like 3 of them, so it can help you to maintain just enough spirit. And another important moment, talking about Chaos Inoculation. I think Chaos Inoculation version is pretty cool as well, so if you have Chaos Inoculation gear, you can go that way. However, I don't think it's really necessary, because while clearing, we're one-shotting everything, and when we are fighting pinnacle bosses, our main goal is just to lock them down with our freeze and with our electrocution. So I don't really think building heavy defenses with Chaos Inoculation is necessary, but if you want to do that, you can still invest into it and change all your items from Hybrid to Energy Shield. That's where we are currently at. I still recommend to take Conservative Casting and Deep Trance to reduce cost of skills significantly, because otherwise mana could be a big issue. The rest of the points are staying the same, so we are still going for Wild Storm, we are still taking attack damage bonuses together with attack speed, and our Ascendancy stays the same, so Lead Me Through Grace, Thunder My Enemies, Blizzard and Avatar. I recommend to go with Thunder My Enemies first, for Blizzard second, for Lead Me Through Grace number 3, and I Shall Rage to Unbound Avatar should be the last. If you feel like Survivability is better for you, you can replace Unbound Avatar with And Protect Me from Harm. It's a pretty decent option. However, most of the time Avatar providing a lot of damage boost, especially on bosses, so I still recommend to play it. You can also invest here for Spectral Ward if you have a full Evasion body armor. So just going 1, 2, 3, 4 points here could help you a lot and give you additional energy shield. I also recommend to try and reach at least 100 mana regeneration for all the setup, and make sure that you have clarity on. So next step is Anoints for our Amulet. I'm still running Overwhelming Strike right now, but Storm Charge could be a very strong option. If you want, you can run Storm Charge, or you can go down here for Overwhelming Strike. As an option, you can always try to take Smash, because it gives a lot of melee damage, and melee damage against heavy stunned enemies, and they're stunning pretty often. If your mana is completely cooked, I recommend to go for Mental Toughness, because it can improve your mana cost significantly and can add some mana regeneration on top. So talking about the jewels, because people are asking very often about the jewels, I recommend to take something basic with lightning damage, damage for quarterstaff and critical hit chance. I think one of the best options should be with 4 damage and stats, and I'm just showcasing my jewels here. Days build up is not really helping a lot. And generally, just getting as much elemental damage as possible together with basic damage and critical hit chance is the way currently. I don't really recommend to invest too much into jewels, and most of the time I'm not buying jewels for more than 1 divine. You can even get some of those for like 20 exalted to set up the build for significantly cheaper compared to other options. That's probably my best jewel right here at the moment. It has attack damage, critical hit chance, lightning damage and some attack speed too, so 4 good stats. And that's a pretty nice one, and it provides significant amount of damage. If you can roll some attack speed on top, it's recommended too, because that way our Tempest Flurry will be much more effective against bosses. So talking about stats, it's very important to reach as high dexterity as possible, and going for at least 130 intelligence is very important too. For quarterstaff, I recommend to focus on physical first, and getting increased elemental damage with attacks and level of melee skills is very important as well. Lightning damage, on the other hand, is not that important. I already have it on my staff, but if you can get a pure physical staff with elemental damage with attacks and level of all melee skills, it will work just fine. If on top of it you can roll some attack speed or critical damage, it would work very good. And belt is mostly used for resistances together with boots, and as I already showcased, a helmet. Talking about body armor, at body armor you just need to aim for as high evasion and energy shield as possible to fix your spirit, so prioritize evasion and energy shield over everything else. If you can roll some resistances, it will be nice. If you cannot, don't worry about it, cap it from other items and just aim for evasion and energy shield to reach at least 220 spirit to stack all auras in. So that's been my guide for NUKE Crit Wave Comet. I think right now the build in a pretty good position. It can cast very good boss clear, it can also clear areas without a single issue, literally destroying clears with one click. It's looking good, it's looking strong, and I'm sure it's going to become even better. Stay tuned for further updates. I'm going to share all the information that I'm going to test later on. And thank you very much for watching. Merry Christmas, and see you next time. ronarray out.